In 1799, New York City Police Constable Ichabod Crane is assigned to the upstate Dutch hamlet of Sleepy Hollow, where a wealthy father and son, as well as a widow, have been brutally decapitated. Received by wealthy businessman Baltus Van Tassel, town Dr. Thomas Lancaster, Reverend Steenwick, Notary James Hardenbrook, and Magistrate Samuel Phillips, Ichabod learns that locals believe the killer is the undead apparition of a headless Hessian mercenary from the American Revolutionary War who rides a black steed in search of his missing head. Ichabod begins his investigation with skepticism about the paranormal story. He is taken with Baltus' spiritual daughter, Katrina, while boarding at the home of Baltus Van Tassel and his wife, Lady Van Tassel. When a fourth victim is killed, Ichabod adopts the victim's son, young Mossbath. Ichabod and Mossbath exhumed the victims after receiving a tip from Phillips, learning that the widow died pregnant. Shortly after, Ichabod witnesses the horseman murdering Phillips. He, young Mossbath, and Katrina venture into the western woods, where a cave crone reveals the location of the horseman's grave at the Tree of the Dead. He excavates the horseman's grave and finds the skull missing, deducing that it was stolen by someone who now controls him and that the tree is his portal into the living world. When Katrina's suitor Brom tries to intervene, the horseman kills the village midwife and her family, as well as the village midwife and her family. Ichabod hypothesizes that the horseman is targeting specific targets linked by a conspiracy. He and Mossbath pay a visit to Hardenbrook, who reveals that the first victim, Peter Van Garrett, secretly married the widow and left his estate to her in a new will. Ichabod concludes that all of the victims, except Brom, are either beneficiaries or witnesses to the new will, and that the horseman's master is the person who would have inherited the estate otherwise, Baltus, a Van Garrett relative. Katrina burns the evidence after discovering the accusation. Hardenbrook commits suicide, and Steenwick calls a town meeting to discredit Ichabod, but Baltus storms in, announcing that the horseman has murdered his wife. The horseman attempts to enter the church, but is unable to do so. In the midst of the chaos, the remaining elders turn on each other, killing Steenwick and Lancaster, and the horseman harpoons Baltus through a window, dragging him out of the church and stealing his head. Ichabod initially believes Katrina controls the horseman until he discovers that her diagram, which he thought summoned the horseman, is actually one of protection, and he also discovers a post-mortem wound on Lady Van Tassel's body. Lady Van Tassel then reveals herself to Katrina and explains her true ancestry from an impoverished family evicted years ago by Van Garrett when he preferred Baltus and Katrina instead. She vowed vengeance on Van Garrett and all who had wronged her, pledging herself to Satan in exchange for raising the horseman to avenge her and claiming the estate uncontested. She used fear, blackmail, and lust to manipulate her way into the Van Tassel household and draw the other elders into her plot. She summons the horseman to finish Katrina after eliminating all other heirs and witnesses and killing her sister, the crone, for assisting Ichabod. As the horseman approaches, Ichabod and Mossbath rush to the windmill. Ichabod throws the horseman's skull to him after an escape that destroys the windmill and the subsequent chase to the tree of the dead. With his head restored, the horseman spares Katrina and attacks Lady Van Tassel, kissing her bloodily and returning to hell with her in tow, completing the deal. Ichabod returns to New York with Katrina and young Mossbath, just in time for the new century, his faith restored. Please subscribe my channel. Thanks for watching this video.